This video is entitled Electromagnetic Understanding. Because of all the obvious scientific and engineering success in the development of a myriad of electrical and electronic devices that we use every day, you might wonder, exactly what is it about electromagnetic phenomena that are not already understood? It is not obvious or well known that at the fundamental level, scientists and engineers do not really understand very much at all. They know how to make a lot of things work and work very well, but they do not understand precisely what the fundamentals are and how the fundamentals interact to make those things work. Here is a short list of the unsolved fundamental mysteries, the things that are still not understood by scientists down to the fundamental level. How many and what are the fundamental forms of energy? What is the nature and purpose of relativity? What is the nature and structure of the atom? What is the nature of mass? What is the nature of light? What is the nature of gravity? What is the nature of inertia? And what is the nature of electricity? And what is the nature of magnetism? In this video, I focus on electricity and magnetism. Let's begin with the fundamental forms of energy. At the fundamental level, energy can only take three forms. First is the energy ocean. It fills the immensity of space. It is comprised of photons of light, which is entirely a particle phenomenon. Secondly, atoms, indeed all particles, are tiny tornadoes of energy, spun from the photons of light that make up the energy ocean. Different sizes and shapes of the tornadoes represent the various elements. And third, our velocity through the energy ocean keeps our tiny atomic tornadoes spinning, like a pinwheel held outside the window of a moving automobile. There are no other forms of energy at the fundamental level, and no particles have any other form than that of a tiny energy tornado. In this video, I will demonstrate a very simple physics experiment involving electricity and magnetism. Then I will explain how and why that experiment worked all the way down to the three fundamental forms of energy listed here. This experiment demonstrates that a magnetic field emerges around a wire when electric current flows through it. The direction of the magnetic field is predicted by the right-hand rule. When electricity moves in the direction of the thumb, then the magnetic field circles around the wire in the direction of the curled fingers. The experiment is oriented so that the wire runs in a north-south direction. When no electricity is flowing through the wire, the compass needle points to the north, and 62 DC volts are available to power the experiment. The compass is situated directly below the wire, and when power is applied, the 62 DC volts are drawn down to 47 volts, and 5 amps of electric current begin to flow along the wire from south to north. As a result, the compass needle points to the west. We just saw what happened when electricity flowed along the wire. A magnetic field emerged and turned the compass needle from north to west. Now, electricity and magnetism were both on that list of unsolved fundamental mysteries. So, to explain the experiment down to the fundamental level, I need to first explain the fundamentals of electricity and magnetism. What is electricity? What is a magnetic field? Consider a weather tornado. It is generally understood to consist of rapidly circulating air with a center flow of warm air rising to the clouds above. Energy tornadoes that make up the atoms of our existence spin in a similar manner and have a center flow of energy as well. The atom's center flow of energy is electricity. The atom's surrounding circular energy spin is its magnetic field. The amount of electricity and the intensity of the magnetic field are very small for a single atom, so to manifest the magnetic effect shown in the experiment that caused the compass needle to move, many atoms must be working together in concert. When that happens, it begins to affect the surrounding energy ocean. And let's take a closer look at precisely what is going on. In their natural state, surface atoms are randomly oriented, exhausting their electrical flow back into the surrounding energy ocean. This tiny individual flow of electricity generally goes unnoticed. But when we get those surface atoms working together, all aligned in the same direction, the sum total of their combined center electrical flows is sufficient to power our everyday lives, and then some. But how do we get those surface atoms to line up? Two different energy flows are required to produce electricity. All power sources, such as generators and solar cells and batteries, create high energy pressure regions in the energy ocean. When connected to a circuit, that high pressure energy flows in a manner similar to water. Like water, high energy pressure flows faster than low energy pressure. Well, while electrical voltage is sometimes compared to water pressure, electricity always flows at the same speed regardless of the voltage. The energy pressure flows produced by our various power sources are not electricity. Those energy flows simply align the surface atoms along the wire. Higher energy pressure will align more surface atoms, but electricity always and only comes from the atom's center flow of energy, and that flow is always traveling at the same speed, c, the speed of light. So, no matter how many atoms are aligned, no matter how much electricity flows, it always flows at the same rate. And that explains what electricity is and where it comes from. Now I will explain the magnetic field that surrounds a wire with current flowing through it. A representation of a section of wire is shown on the left. The current is flowing in the direction indicated by the arrow. The wire's surface atoms are bent in the direction of the current flow. An end view of that section of wire shows the surface atoms represented by the smaller circles surrounding the wire. According to the right-hand rule, the atomic rotation for those surface atoms will be counterclockwise. Notice that the inner part of the spin is next to the wire, while the outer part of the spin is next to the surrounding energy ocean. This coordinated atomic rotation causes what I call a type 1 sympathetic rotation of the surrounding energy ocean. This sympathetic rotation is what scientists now call a magnetic field that surrounds a wire with current flowing through it. While this is not the only form of a magnetic field, it is the one that caused the compass needle to point to the west. When the current flow is reversed, the compass needle points to the east. While the surface atoms all continue to spin in the same direction, they are now bent and oriented in the opposite direction. What was the bottom of the atom's spin before now becomes the top of the spin. What was counterclockwise before now becomes clockwise. The sympathetic rotation of the surrounding energy ocean is also reversed, causing the compass needle to point to the east. Now, to this point, I have explained the origins and essence of electricity and one form of a magnetic field. But I have not yet explained how the magnetic field actually moved the compass needle, which is a permanent magnet. To understand a magnet, you need to understand a type 2 sympathetic rotation of the energy ocean. A type 2 sympathetic rotation occurs when the atoms are oriented perpendicular to the surface of the body. In this case, the surrounding energy ocean is exposed to all sides of the atom, not just the outer edge, as was the case in type 1. As the energy ocean swirls in sympathy here, the extension grows in a form similar to the atom, but larger. This reaction is like the operation of a blender, where the swirling blade at the bottom, like the atom, is the primary source of the spin, and the surrounding water, like the energy ocean, joins that spin in sympathy, so to speak. Both types of sympathy rotations are used in the operation of a magnet. Let's look at the making of a magnet. We start with an iron bar. It does not attract other pieces of iron to it. It doesn't point to the north like a compass needle. It is just a plain, simple iron bar. Now we add a coil of wire around the bar and give it a shot of DC electric current. The bar looks the same as it did before, but now it is a magnet. It has a north and south pole and can attract other pieces of iron. It can attract and repel other magnets. Its external appearance has not changed, but internally something different is going on. Step 1 in becoming a magnet is to internally duplicate the external flow of electricity that turned the plain, simple bar of iron into a magnet in the first place. This is accomplished by reorienting some of the surface atoms along the length of the bar such that the electrical outflow of one atom becomes the inflow of another. In essence, the surface atoms replicate the effect of the coil of wire. Step 2 is to initiate the magnetic flow. The exhibit on the right shows atomic tornadoes aligned in a circular pattern with their electrical center flow in a counterclockwise direction. The energy ocean fills the inside of the bar as well as the area surrounding the bar, so type 1 sympathetic rotations will occur, although differently than before. Notice that the rings of electrical flow circle around the bar all along the length of the bar. This means that the inner magnetic flow will be directed by the inner part of the atomic spin from south to north. The external magnetic flow is directed by the outer part of the atomic spin from north to south. The outer magnetic flow will bend some surface atoms so that their electrical flow will be in a north to south direction, sort of a reverse magnetic flow. But the inner magnetic flow from south to north is passing through many more of the atoms that make up the iron bar. More of those atoms will bend in the direction of the flow and contribute their coordinated center electrical flows in the process. So now we have a supermagnetic flow in both directions, a magnetic flow initiated by a type 1 sympathetic rotation of the surrounding circular atoms, plus an electrical flow added by the reorientation of atoms. In the compass and wire experiment, electricity flowed along the wire from the power source all the way to ground. In a permanent magnet, the supermagnetic flow only goes from one end of the iron bar to the other. Then it flows out the end into the energy ocean. That outflow on the north end and inflow on the south end aligns surface atoms perpendicularly to the ends of the magnet. Those atoms are surrounded by the energy ocean and support a type 2 sympathetic rotation, which extends their atomic spins. This is the initiation of lines of magnetic force. As the extensions grow longer, their outer diameters widen, altering the path of the force lines. The extensions continue to grow out of both sides of the magnet until some of the lines meet and connect. The magnetic outflow of one becomes the inflow of the other. The other lines of force just fade back into the surrounding energy ocean, too weak and far apart to make a connection. Now that we have gained some appreciation for the flow dynamics involved in the normal operation of a magnet, let's revisit the experiment where current flowing along a wire affected a compass needle, and learn what really made that compass needle move. First, there was a wire laid out in a north-south direction, a section of which is represented by the gray rectangle. Just below the wire is a circle, representing the end view of that section of the wire. On the right is a graphic representation of the compass, and below that is an edge view of that same compass. In the experiment, the compass was situated beneath the wire. So when I turned the power on, Electricity flowed through the wire from south to north. Looking at the end view of the wire, that's the circle below the wire, we can see that a magnetic field formed around the wire, rotating in a clockwise direction. This is consistent with the right-hand rule. Because the compass is located beneath the wire, it is the bottom part of the magnetic rotation that is closest to the compass needle. That part of the rotation is moving in a westerly direction. So when we look at the wire above, we see the effective direction of the magnetic field surrounding the wire to be flowing west. Then the compass needle, which is a permanent magnet, turned to the west. Now, looking to the left, we see a diagram of a permanent magnet showing its effective flow characteristics. Inside the magnet, we have the supermagnetic flow moving from the south pole to the north pole. Externally, we have surface atoms at each pole aligned perpendicularly, guiding and supporting the energy flow through the magnet. So, when we overlay the compass needle with the magnet diagram, we can see the magnetic flows for both the magnet and the wire, and they are not flowing in the same direction. Now, the Earth's magnetic field is not nearly as strong as the magnetic field surrounding the wire, so the needle rotated to point to the west. In that position, the flow through the magnet merged with the flow around the wire, like traffic from an on-ramp merging with traffic on an interstate highway. When I reversed the current flow, it also reversed the direction of the magnetic spin. Traffic on the magnetic highway was now traveling in the opposite direction, and the magnetic needle had to go with the flow. So it reversed its direction and pointed to the east. Here is a quick look at the changes that occurred in the lines of magnetic force that emanated from the compass needle. Before the current began to flow along the wire, the lines of magnetic force flowed from the compass needle's north pole and connected with the lines of force entering its south pole. When the current began to flow through the wire towards us, the magnetic flow around the wire was in a counterclockwise direction. The magnetic flow around the compass needle was being replaced by the magnetic flow around the wire, such that the magnet actually became part of the magnetic flow around the wire. This simple wire and compass experiment has been performed thousands of times in physics labs all around the world. But this is the first time it has been reasonably explained down to the fundamental level. That is because, until now, the true nature of the three fundamental forms of energy have been an unsolved mystery. These same three fundamental forms of energy are the only basis for reasonably explaining all fundamental and near-fundamental phenomena. In the world of physics, this is fundamental truth. Now, some may claim that there is no such thing as fundamental truth. There are only theories which can change over time as new experiments reveal new results. In this video, there are no new equations that can be used as mathematical proof. There is only a reasonable explanation as to how this simple experiment actually works all the way down to the fundamental level, those three fundamental forms of energy. No past, present, or future theories that identify fundamental forms of energy different from these three will ever serve as a basis for reasonably explaining this simple electromagnetic experiment. If existing theories cannot be used as a basis for reasonably explaining this simple experiment, what is the justification for using those theories as a basis for explaining the origin of the universe?